My name is Alan McLaren. I'm the co-founder of Strata Originals. On this podcast, we interview originals, as the name implies. Originals are people that stand out by the lessons and stories they share to help us all grow as leaders and as humans. It's my great pleasure today to introduce you all to a legend in the transportation industry. That's a big word, isn't it, Mike? Yes.
Oh, boy, I'm not sure what I surely call myself that.
Well, your wife might call you a legend. That's a whole other conversation. Um, he's a legend in the transportation and supply chain industry. And Mike McCarron is an award-winning Canadian entrepreneur, journalist, and thought leader with 41 years of trucking and for Canadian ears only, big hockey guy. Actually, not true. Americans like hockey too.
They're better at it than we are too now.
What's that?
I think they might be better at it than we are, but we'll find out in about a month.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that. Mike is also a former owner of the St. Michael's Buzzers, in the OJHL, and they were champions during his
We
tenure.
were three times and won three rings with them.
Mike is still active in business in partnership with his son Patrick at Right Route Supply Chain Solutions, while still doing deals as a partner at Left Lane Associates, which is North America's premier supply chain investment bank that was 57th on Canada's list of top growing companies of 24, with a 3-year revenue growth of 753. Mike, I'm going to need to get some advice from you, dude, on how you did that. So, and Mike's also a long-standing member of an organization we both love called YPO.
Absolutely.
So
Love
learning
it.
ahead, people, learning ahead. Let's begin with an icebreaker. We always do that, Mike. And what's the most unusual or memorable cargo shipment you've ever had to handle?
Well, that's a great question because there's been hundreds of thousands, but one really stands out. We had an office in Los Angeles, and we did quite a bit of work with musicians, moving them to and from Canada. And we got wind that one musician that we were hauling their piano, should remain nameless, wasn't great at paying bills.
Oh,
So we had this piano stuck in a customs warehouse, and I wouldn't release it. She was playing with Eddie Van Halen. This was back in the late '80s, and I wouldn't release the piano until she paid. And she asked me to come down. I went and met her, and she tried to give me autograph albums and that. And I said to her many times, all we want is an autograph on a check. So we hopped in the car, and I took her down to the government warehouse, and she was smelling a lot like marijuana after I picked her up at the hotel. And I said to her, I said, this could be a problem. We're going to the government warehouse here. So sure enough, we go in the government warehouse, and she smelled like dope. And I said to her, you got any dope in your pocket? She goes, well, just a little bit. And as this sniffing dog is coming down the hallway. So I literally, Alan pushed her in a closet, stood there. I knew the customs guy walked by, and we got the piano out just in time to get down for a big show with Eddie Van Halen. She wasn't very happy. And, she was really trying to negotiate in the car. And as we were going to the bond shed, her famous song came on the radio about 3 times. Every time it came on the radio, I'd switch channels on her. So that got her even more insightful. So, but anyways, we got our money because, once you release that shipment, you're not getting paid. And about 15,000 is a lot of money, even a lot more back in the '80s.
that's funny. Yeah, well, we don't want to share her name, but you and I have to talk about that on the side.
That's
So
not, yeah, it's not fair to share her name.
that's cool. So so Mike, 41 years in the space. I'd love to explore the backstory. How did you get to this business, and tell us a little bit about that journey?
Well, I really got in the business. The backstory is I graduated from the University of Toronto in 1983 with a degree in political science economics. So, I was looking for a sales job. And at the time, Yellow Freight was advertising at U of T. And frankly, the big attraction was $36,000 in a company car. Back then, the going rate for sales jobs was kind of 18, 19, 20. So it was a big, big bump. And, that was a big attraction. I really didn't know what I was getting involved in. It turned out to be some great lessons learned from my career, but it was really about the money, a sales job with an American company that was coming to Canada.
Interesting. So tell me, when you started at Yellow in sales. So walk me through, you know, the time at Yellow and other stuff you did, and then when you decided to go out on your own.
So I was at Yellow from 1983 to 1989. It was a really fantastic learning experience for me because I was in sales, and I learned two really important lessons there that I really didn't know at universities. First and foremost, back then it was a commoditized business, and I had three major competitors. And back then, we had sales territories. And what I realized really quickly was that Back then my competition wasn't Consolidated Freightways, it wasn't Arkansas Best Freight, it wasn't Consolidated Freightways. It was actually the sales reps of those companies because it was a commoditized business. So I really realized that I didn't have to be better than anyone, but the three people I was competing against. And so that really kind of first got me inclined way before social media, this personal branding about just being, on top of the thought leadership. Back there was no internet. So I really felt that my competition was the three other reps. And I also learned the power of reoccurring revenue.
Hmm.
And that's part that really intrigued me because I realized that once you got a new customer, it wasn't a one and done. It was it was the start of hopefully a long-standing relationship. So the recurring revenue piece really, really hit me hard, saying, this is a fantastic opportunity. I like this business for this reason. Um, Starting MSM happened back in the late '80s, and that was largely because Yellow Freight. They had offered me three promotions transfers. The first one was to the branch manager of London. I said no. The next one was branch manager of Montreal. The same old deal. Mike, we got some great news. You're doing well. And I said, I got some bad news. I'm not leaving Toronto. And then the last piece was Kansas City. They made me the Canadian president. Um, and then they told me after I accepted the job, I had to move to Kansas City.
Hmm.
I wasn't doing that, plain and simple. So we kind of agreed to disagree. And my wife, I remember it was 1990. My wife was in the hospital with my oldest daughter, and they wanted me to fly down. I basically flied down and quit. I didn't tell my wife and started a freight brokerage business out of necessity. I think our baby was 6 months old until I told my wife that I left and started a company. So because I didn't want her to worry.
It's always interesting, right? When you at the point of promotion is also a point of high vulnerability in a business, isn't it? You never think about that, is it? What a great story that is.
Well, it wasn't like, see, the thing with the Americans I learned was that work was way more important than it was to Canadians. And my boss said to me, "We've moved our family 15 times." I'm like, "We're not Canadian. Like, I'm not moving across the country for an 8 truck in my car." And they just couldn't believe I turned in these promotions. And I thought, I'm not. You got to understand, I'm a Canadian. I'm an Etobicoke guy. My parents are alive. My sisters, my family. I'm not going. Plain and simple. And they just couldn't get their head around that because they're so used to moving. And they really found that was a big difference to the Canadians, is we tend to we work to live and they live to work, and they're way more intense than we are. They're better at doing business, but I kind of like our family first approach, Frank, a little bit better.
It's I think it's almost values based in a lot of ways, right? It kind of
I agree.
puts the family ahead of the business. But it's something, when you're young, it's really hard to do that. It's where did you get those values early enough in your life that you had that stance to say, I think it's more important that I stay here than to pursue the career that, could have gone different places for you. Where did you get that from?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think my dad was a very principle-centered man, very simple, very principled, very religious. So, I learned from him this notion of really doing the right thing. And I also saw these yellow guys struggling. They'd move across the country and their kids would go with them, and they're always the new kids in class. I'm like, I just don't want this for my family. I just couldn't. Like, they'd move 8, 10, 12 times, and that was really their modus operandi. And it didn't resonate with Canadians at all. And so I just think it's a cultural thing. There's probably a lot better options to live in the States, but I think, and I found this when I had an office in LA, very few people in the United States live in the city they grew up. And I actually think you're really missing part of life when you don't have that sense of community.
Really cool. I love that. So when you started, and now starting a business sounds really good on paper, doesn't it? Tell me about what happened when you approached your wife and said, "I'm starting this business." Was it an easy conversation or was it a challenging one?
Well, I was already about 6 months into it when I approached her, and that was a matter of deceit. It was just I didn't want to burden her with it. Yeah, she had a very good job, which really helped. She was executive of the bank, but I just really felt that with the reoccurring revenue model that I believe trucking was, and the fact we were middlemen, it's just getting through the first kind of year and a half, because I
Hmm.
realized that once I had a family And once my wife was on the sidelines, doing it would be really hard. And I think when you're young, you have a lot more courage than you do today, because the runway is a lot longer. And you know, I only invested $15,000, which I borrowed from my father-in-law. Um, and as I said, it was there was definitely a lot of sleepless nights, more a lot of sleepless nights as we start growing, as we started getting assets, and as you know, you start having to secure things with your house
Mhm.
and RSPs and things like that. So, you know, that was a little bit more nervy, but I just think, you know, you got to have the confidence and the bravado to trust that you know what you're doing, and that if you work hard enough, I think at anything you can actually make money at it.
You think anybody can be an entrepreneur?
Yes.
Awesome. Tell me about
I think the biggest thing, Alan, is you have to have the resources to play the long game. And I think that
that.
the mistake I see a lot of entrepreneurs make is they're not well capitalized enough. They're forced to make short-term decisions, and short-term decisions are expensive, they're painful, and they're often short-term. So that to me is the biggest thing. And you know, I do quite a bit of mentoring, and the one thing I say to people, it's just about having the short game, and that's why I thank my wife. It drives me nuts when people say it's your business. It's not my business. It's a family business. Because if my wife did not have a job, a good job at the bank, I could never start this. I was making like $30,000. It was really difficult, and that's when my mortgage rate was 11.75. So it's a team effort. And you must know this yourself. I need to have someone at home to watch your kids. I need to have someone to take the kids to sporting events when I was away. So without my wife Tammy at home, there's no way I could have done this when I did it. In fact, ever probably.
That's so great that you acknowledge that, because a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of get the accolades themselves, and it takes a village, right, to build a business. And
Oh, to raise three children, the sports, the you know, it's a hard world, Alan. You know that you have children. It's a very hard world, and you need mom at home. And that's you know that's the one thing I'm most proud of is I was able to keep her home with the kids where she belongs, and we're paying the price now. It probably cost us some money. It
yeah,
cost me some sleepless nights, but I'm a big believer in the long game, and by having a wife with a decent job who was willing to retire when she did to take care of the kids. Without that, I would have never been able to do what I did.
so what, when you think about building your business, how long was it before, like, how long did you have MSM before you kind of went to Left Lane and other stuff? Like, how is it?
We had MSM for I think 23 years. I sold that in 2012. And the reason we sold it was because my partner didn't want to grow the business anymore. He had quite a bit of few family members working there. He was very content, and I really believe that organizations are like plants, and once you stop feeding them. I learned some great lessons at YPO about that. I really did, Dr. Desis, and this notion of if they're like plants, you got to feed them. And I was really worried that you know, we started sitting back and enjoying the fruits of our labor a little bit too much, especially in a reoccurring revenue business when you're only as good as your last shipment, that we would lose a bunch of long-term employees. So I was really worried about that. So, you know, I really didn't want to sell the business, but I felt that when I did the math on it, I realized if I do this properly, I can set my family up forever. Not necessarily, it's not about being filthy rich. It's a matter of setting up so I can help them down the road and have enough resources that if the money was invested properly, I could literally take the chips off the table and not really worry about, you know, being able to help my kids get settled in this crazy expensive city.
That's cool. I love that, because again, back to the values, right? It started lessons from your dad that reflected in the first gigs you got, and now reflected in how you wanted to take care of your family. I haven't heard the word Mike once. It's all about me and all that. So that just shows that, that when you do it right, you said do the right thing. What a great thing to put on your casket at the
I
end.
really believe that. And I learned that from my dad. I really believe that. And, you know, he was it was a wonderful experience when he was dying. And that sounds crazy, but I went from an Alzheimer's diagnosis, which means years and years of no dignity, no pride, tough on the family, to a pancreatic cancer diagnosis after, which 3 fantastic months of just visiting and spending time together, and realizing that if you're a good person, you live forever. I really believe that, and it just really got into my head. My dad was an old, kind of a hard drink and hard smoke and Irishman that came across as a hard ass, but because I think he didn't say love to me till he was on his deathbed, but he played the long game, and a good example of actions speak louder than words for sure.
That's so cool. But Mike, one of the things that, as you know, we're in the personal branding business, and I've always been curious about the thought leadership stuff. When did you make a decision that you needed to get out there to be a thought leader, and what benefits did you derive from doing that? So tell me about when and how that came to you.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. So I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed writing, and I realized in the trucking, see, unlike a lot of my peers, I was more the trucking industry. I didn't really like trucks. I didn't like trucking. I was just really good at sales. So I recognized that a lot of the trade journals back probably 25 years ago, there really no one talked about sales and marketing. So I picked up the phone one day and I went and spent some time with a guy named Jim Leona, who owns a company called Newcomb Publishing. And I basically walked in his office and said, I wouldn't mind writing a column for you here. I've written 3 or 4 samples. And he liked it. And he said, kid, there's no pay. You're not getting paid. But if you're prepared to write a column, I'll give you an opportunity. So I started writing a column for him. And what happened is over the years, it really evolved where I was writing a lot of just general stuff, like how to build a website and how to make sales calls and all sales and marketing. And about 10 years into it, they got a new editor, a guy named Stephen Pettit. And he said, I would like you to start writing about trucking industry events. And so it really forced me to dig deep every month because when you're writing a column, you just can't state the obvious. You got to put some thought into it. So that became a real boon to my career because it really forced me to be number one is you have to have an original thought every month. It's got to be original thought about the business. So that that really is it keeps you on the leading edge when you're really not anymore. And then you get in front of 90, 60, 70,000 people a month and 90% penetration. You're going to get some noise from that. So that really started to lead into a lot more. What I noticed is a lot more media requests, a lot more requests for interviews, a lot more speaking engagements, because I wasn't afraid to say what maybe everyone was thinking but was afraid to say. And so I went out there on many issues on a limb that a lot of people didn't like. In fact, a lot of people still don't like it, but I try and speak. I don't promote people. I don't promote products. I don't promote companies. I just try and put a spin on the issues. And it's been a lot of fun, but clearly it's helped me grow my brand. And by doing that, what it really means is that you become trusted. People respect your opinion. And what it often does is when you're looking to do deals, it kind of gets you to third base. It doesn't get you deals, but it gets you around the bases a lot faster because people think, hey, he's committed to the space. He understands the space, and I wouldn't mind what he has to say. So it's really helped my career from the standpoint of it allows you to sell and grow your brand without really ever selling because I don't sell at all. I really don't sell. I don't like chasing deals. I don't like that perception. I just like putting it out there. And when people call, it's not about if you're getting a deal, it's when you're going to get the deal.
I love it because what you've done is, and obviously, with personal branding today, we have the advent of digital, but back then you didn't. But what you did was you started the process by writing, which caused you to think more about stuff. People,
Absolutely.
and then opportunities showed up at your doorstep that you weren't planning on. Speaking
No,
journalists, right?
no, exactly. And things like for example, it's really allowed me. Like I often feel like an elder statesman, where I get a lot of respect from the kids, and they ask me to speak to the Toronto Transportation Club. I was a president 30 years ago about ethics because I really struggle with these kids drinking on the club and having dinners, and I was like bare bones. But and I think that it's interesting because when my son got back from, my son was a professional hockey player, and he got COVIDed out, so he worked in the house for a year. And he goes, Dad, like you get so many calls for advice. You should charge. And I said, Patrick, I'm not charging because that's playing the short game.
Yeah.
I'm not, so I'm going to say, okay, your 5 calls are up now at 6.50 an hour. And I said, that's nickel and dime business. I want to sell their business one day. And if I keep calling them for advice, in particular sales advice on how to make their company more valuable, how to grow their business, I'm not guaranteed to get the mandate when they sell or get the mandate when they want to buy, but I'll be in the conversation. And I like our chance that we're in the conversation against a big investment bank that's only in supply chain because they happen to have a mandate where we're in it all the time.
I love it because it comes back to the foundation of trust, right?
Yes,
Right.
100%.
Back to your foundation of trust that you were able to leverage that in the industry, which brought you opportunities that now, if the funnel's big enough, then you get opportunities like you did, right?
So much of it, Alan, is just doing the right thing. And people are worried too much about likes and dislikes and reshares. Just do the right thing. And you know, I tell people this all the time. Do you pick up the dog poop at 10 o'clock at night when no one's looking?
Yeah.
And if you do, then you got it. If you don't, then you don't have it. And it's just, what do you do when people aren't looking? And I, you know, I just, I really, really believe if you do the right thing more often than not and just take the high road, you're going to be successful. And even if you're maybe not successful as you want, you got to sleep at night.
Yeah, that sleeping at night part as an entrepreneur, it can be challenging, especially at the beginning. But when you get to a place where, you had MSM for 20 years, and then when did you move to Left Lane? Was that part of what you were doing, or was that after MS?
What happened with MSM? I sold in 2012, and I was 52. I was going to retire. That wasn't going to work out very good. I had to prepare myself for retirement with hobbies. I'd come off coaching my kids for 20 years, selling the business, no hobbies. And what I didn't want to do is turn into, like a lot of my friends have done well, is they turn into lunchtime alcoholics where they just get it. And I like to have a drink and I like to golf. And I don't want that. I want to be drinking every day. So, in hindsight, it worked out really well, Alan, because um, I wouldn't have had enough money, frankly, to help the kids the way I have because this world is a lot like all the retirement planning I did went out to naught when things started going changing. So it's worked out. It's worked out really well. And really, it was just I saw a need. I saw the changing truck industry. I had a 5-year non-compete when I sold, so I saw the industry. And as soon as that non-compete was up, I attacked it with someone I met at Wheels because I saw the way that the immigrants were starting to take over. I saw that the old truckers had really had enough of it. Their kids don't want the business. They had made a lot of money in land. So the timing was good to do something else. And frankly, work is a lot more fun. We don't have to work. It's so much fun because you can really become a mentor.
Yeah,
You can learn from the mistakes and you can really roll the dice because it's free money, frankly.
that's really
It's
cool.
a lot more fun.
Where did you get the name Left Lane from? Where did that come from?
So that's a great question. A lot of people said you should call us McCarron Consulting, and I said I'm not calling this McCarron. It's just first of all, I think it's just so vain. But I didn't want the business to be about me. So left lane and trucking is the lane that you pass the competition. So
Mm.
you pass the competition. That was our, I actually hired a fantastic guy named John Furno. It cost me $14,000. But the interesting part about naming is it's not always finding the right name. It's finding the right name you can use because so many are taken. So
Yeah.
left lane is we do a lot of work getting companies pre-ready to sell. And the thinking is that by using left lane, we'll put your position in past your competition and trade for a higher multiplier because we'll get you sell ready.
I love it, love it, love it. It's cool. And you're also working with your son in the other business. So tell us about
I
that.
am. So before COVID, the business was really nothing about Patrick at all. Before COVID, left lane is a deal-based business.
Yeah.
We don't make any money unless we sell. So it's risky. It's a very risky proposition because of the fact that um, as much as you can do a fantastic job, ultimately your clients make decisions whether they make money or not. And that really made me nervous. So we were looking to get back in the freight brokerage business to take advantage of the changing times because it's reoccurring revenue. We wanted to get left lane investing in operating companies. So we decided on the investor said, I want to get back in the brokerage business, which is my core business, frankly.
Mhm.
And Patrick was just a timing thing. He had started working for Left Lane when he got COVIDed out. He enjoyed the research part, but he did not like working in the same company I was there. He did not want to be daddy's kid. He said, Dad, I love it, but I don't want to work under your shadow. And so this worked out really well. So we started this business 3 years ago. They're up to about 10 employees, but more importantly, he loves it. And
Mm.
daddy gets to talk to his son. I get a phone call every morning at 6 o'clock. Again, whenever it's 6 o'clock, so I don't know too many dads get to talk to their son for 2 hours a day, and he's adamant about carrying on. I didn't realize we had a family legacy in the business, but he seems to think we haven't, so I'll go with it for him.
That's cool. I love that. That's good. So he has his autonomy, and
100%.
he has that around when he needs sound advice or counsel.
Yeah, yeah, he needed me at the beginning a lot. We started right during COVID, and my philosophy was with this business was that you don't need experience. We're hiring ex-athletes from our athletic network, all no experience. So once again, we're playing the long game. And the biggest thing with him is that he really, 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 he's an Ivy League. He's got a degree from Cornell, All American from Cornell, and he's dispatching trucks. He loves it. First guy in, last guy out, and all he really like, he knows the business better than I do already. He might not be able to sell like the old man, but he knows the business. He knows the business really well. More important, he really, really enjoys it. He's got that passion. And I said to all the kids, you've got to find something you like, or you'll never be successful at it. You won't like it.
I love it. So let's just go change gears just real quick. Just curious about a question because you're such an expert in this space. If you could solve one major supply chain issue facing the industry, what do you think that would be, and how would you attack it?
So I'm very concerned today about one thing, and that's the safety on the highways.
Hmm.
What's happened, Alan, over the last 12, 15 years is you've got the industry evolving. You got old people, old entrepreneurs like myself getting out. Their kids don't want the business. They made quite a bit of money on land. And probably the biggest thing is that they do not want to engage in a gig economy. You've got an entire the immigrant population, largely driven by South Asians, are very active in the business. I would suggest in Toronto, they're upwards 70, 80% of them own trucking companies.
Wow.
But the challenge is that, trucking is unregulated. And just to put in perspective, to get a trucking driver's license, a driver needs to only have 32 hours of driving on the road.
It.
So just to put that in perspective, a hairdresser needs 4,000. So I've driven a truck recently. I could have got my license that day after 2 hours. And that's a real concern because they're really, unfortunately, a lot of people are taking advantage of immigrants trying to get permanent residency status. They're putting them in very dangerous situations. And frankly, something has to give or the roads are become a demolition derby. It's dangerous. Just to put in perspective, I drove for 2 hours on a truck recently. They took me on the course that they take the test on. I then went in a simulator, which is more realistic, and I must have caused $50 million of property damage the first hour. So it's a real concern. I would like to see truck driving become a red seal trade, an apprentice trade. I really would, because at the end of the day, is we cannot continue. I believe that we're culpable as an industry because I met with Doug Ford, who's a friend of mine. I said, Doug, like 32 hours of driving, like that is, so basically, come to Canada. They give you they kind of cheat you through the test, 32 hours, middle of winter. Here's a truck, 70,000 pounds. Get out to BC now in the snow. Like it's just. And I talk to Uber drivers all the time, and a lot of them, this is their experience, and it's really a runaway train. A lot of it, unfortunately, I think they're slowly starting to cut back on some immigration, but you've got a situation where we just with so much immigration, a lot of them coming from South Asia, they're fantastic people, and they really like the trucking business, but they're not playing a long game the way they should, and they're it's not their fault. They're doing what the government's telling them to do, which is train people for 32 hours. It's very, very, very dangerous.
Insane. I had no idea. That is complete insanity. I mean, even driving a car when you're 16, you got to do more than 32 hours of collective
Nuts.
training and apprenticeship in a year and driving with somebody and a truck, you don't have to. I can go drive a truck in 32 hours.
Disasters. The problem is they're cutting short. They're taking them on tests on the road. The practice on the road. They do the test. It's so bad that large warehouses. So imagine this. So you're a customer, and who uses a lot of these carriers are used by middlemen, third parties like Right. So what happens is you hire a third party. They hire a carrier who's not trained to drive a property, and a lot of these warehouses. So you'll give someone a trucking company a load to California. So a driver that's taking load to California, 2,100 miles through rain, construction, tight roads, weather. These warehouses have got to hire a shunt truck driver because these drivers can't back the truck into the driving spots. So the guy can't back the truck into a driving spot, but he's driving for 2,800 miles to California back. It is,
Wow.
talk to NPs in Northern Ontario. It's bad up north. It is bad, bad, Alan, and something has got to give because the roads are turning into a demolition derby.
I'm going to be more careful when I drive by trucks now, knowing I'm not driving by what I would have expected as someone
I
with
agree. It
experience.
used to be.
Wow.
So when I owned MSM, truck driving were the safest drivers on the road. Thousands of hours. We were all insurance captives. We didn't even need insurance. It's pretty much self-insurance. I really want to move to a self-policing model like the railroads use. That's really enforced by a red seal trade. Truck driving should be a red seal trade like plumbing, electrician, hairdressers, nail people. Like a hairdresser has to get 4,000 hours. There's almost six. This is controlled by the career colleges in Canada. There's 6,000 courses, 7 or 8 inspectors. The guy inspecting truck driving schools inspecting hair salons too. So it's just like the government's got all these rules, but they're just not being enforced. I know it's
I'm
quite a
glad,
serious situation.
I'm glad I asked you that question, and I'm terrified. So I don't know if I'm really that glad I asked you the question. Ignorance is bliss, but it's not in this case because it's dangerous. So thanks for sharing that. My couple, just to end on something that you're incredibly passionate about, the sport of hockey. Um, first of all, tell me quickly, how did you get involved in hockey? Like how did you get to that place where you could own a team?
It's called like a con is how that happens. So
Of
the
course.
same the same Michael's Buzzers were owned by the Brazilian priests of St. Mike's. They could no longer fund anymore. I was involved at MSM. We ran quite a big charity golf tournament for a guy named Rick Gates. You might know the name from. He was from Vitran, and we raised $150,000. He unfortunately lost a daughter in a pool accident. So the school approached me about. They basically gave me a team for $1. Um, I ran it for 7. I don't know. I think LinkedIn says 14. I think I did it for 17 because I wanted to top. But no, it was a labor of love, a passion. Um, it wasn't, all hobbies are expensive, so it's not a money maker. But I had a lot of fun. I'm a big hockey fan, and just what the best part about that is these kids that I helped get to universities and help develop their careers. Now they're friends of mine, and it's so nice. I remember one of these kids that's 4 years old, and you see how they're doing. So it's just it was a right thing to do, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Now, you mentioned when you and your son were working on the business, you'd hire a lot of ex-athletes. Um,
Yes.
so any lessons from the sports world that you can apply to business?
Well, I use sports analogies all the time, Alan. I think that you like to me, you run a sports team exactly like a hockey team. There's accountability, there's ownership to each other, there's systems. When I coach the kids in hockey, I would always tell them, when a car is broken down the side of the road, there's like one part that's broken, and that's the way we run the business here. One part is broken, you just execute. So we find that athletes they're better under pressure. They're used to work as teammates. They failed. When you're like we got a kid from Cornell, a kid from Western Michigan, a kid from the OHL, and they've all failed badly and made mistakes and been yelled at and been accountable. So it's just I just look and it's very very dangerous to make broad statements in this, but I look at the kids I grew up with and the kids that played sports that have done way better in life. It's not even close, and we've got now I think about 9 kids there, and they're all ex-athletes. And I'm not saying we only hire athletes, but we really 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 prefer, especially sales. They have much bigger networks than people. They've our philosophy of sales is getting second place, so it really works well. And I just think, like you put an ad in a paper and you get 3,000 people, and all that matters is one thing: what you can't find out. What do they got in their heart and their integrity? So we really try and hire through our network. Like when we started the business, Alan, we put an ad in the paper. We had 3,000 people. I went through 5. I said, Patrick, I'm not doing this. I can because it's such a teachable business. So we hire from our network people we know, if we don't know, we don't hire, plain and simple. And so it's a little bit slow, but we got a really good core and we got a foundation to grow on.
I love it. Mike, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd want to share with the team, with the group today? Is there any question I haven't asked?
No, this is fantastic. It's a lot of fun, actually. I like doing this. You're good at it too. You put guests at ease, so I can tell you've done this a lot.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. It was just so good to spend time with you on a topic that is not addressed in podcasts too often, other than industry to industry. So hopefully there's some good learnings for people. And
You do a great job. You do a great job. I think personal brand is really important. I always tell people all the time, the most important thing is about you is what people say about you when you leave the room. And that's what, and I don't care what anyone says. If you are not well liked or you're a nice person, I don't care how smart you are, how well you are in business. You play the long game, you disrespect people. You play short game, you disrespect people, and people start saying things about you when they leave the room that you wouldn't like. Good luck.
I could not end this on any better note. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
I look forward to it.
I look forward to it. Thanks, man.
Pleasure. Thanks very much. Awesome. That's fantastic.